boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Netflix brand new adult animated show, Twilight of the Gods, which is based on Norse mythology, and it comes to us from the mind of Zack Snyder, who is behind the DCEU, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League, just to name a few. Of course, that isn't his only claim to fame. He directed 300, the Dawn of the Dead remake, most recently Army of the Dead, which I enjoyed, Rebel Moon films, which I didn't enjoy, but he is a very visual filmmaker. Now, this is an animated show, and so it really didn't touch in on his visual sensibilities so much, even though he did direct 2 of the 8 episodes that were released on Netflix, the first episode and the last episode to bookend the show. But this was, as I stated before, based on Norse mythology, and this is something that I'm into. I'm into these mythologies, Greek mythology. We just got that from Netflix about a month ago with Chaos, that starred Jeff Goldblum, and I deeply enjoyed that show. Live action, of course, but a different take on Greek mythology and a unique approach to it that was fun to watch. I really was into that show. I hope it gets a season 2. And this go around, we get a more streamlined approach to Norse mythology. I also want to mention Jay Olivier was a part of this show as well. If you watched anything in animation from the mid 90s on, he had dipped his toe in. I mean, the Fox Spider-Man show, Extreme Ghostbusters, the Jackie Chan adventures, he redid He-Man, I think, at one point. He also did a lot of DC animated TV shows, Teen Titans, the Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, and going into the animated features with Superman Doomsday and things of that nature. But he also did a lot of storyboarding for a lot of Marvel films. He did the storyboarding for Ant-Man. He did the storyboarding for Man of Steel, I believe, and so on and so forth. So he has a deep, rich knowledge in animation, and you brought that to the table. Not to mention his Batman's, Son of Batman, Batman Assault on Arkham, and things of that nature. He also did the storyboarding for the video games, the Batman Arkham series. He did the storyboarding for that. So this guy knows his stuff. Now, does he know Norse mythology? That's the question. That's what that's what we're signing up for in this show. Now, if you're in the Greek mythology, Norse mythology, things of that nature, this would be the show for you, I believe. This was a very well-made show in that regard. If you're not so much into that, you're probably not going to feel it. I don't think you will find any interest in this. Now, it's not the poo-poo on anybody's intelligence level or nothing like that, but it's so much going on and so many characters bandied about that you would easily get lost if you don't know who they're talking about and what their roles are. You hear names being mentioned like Odin and Thor and Loki and stuff like that. You might get confused and think they're talking about the MCU version of it, the Marvel Comics version of these characters. But no, these are very different characters in Norse mythology, and brutal characters. This show is adult animation, and it is truly adult. This is not for the kiddies. There's nothing about this show that is for children. This is truly an adult animated show. There's sex. There's, I mean, gruesome deaths here, brutal battle scenes here, very bloody, very descriptive. They didn't hold anything back. And quite honestly, you can chalk it up to my sick mind, but I actually appreciated that. You know, don't cheapen. You have to show how brutal these gods can be. You know, if Thor's hammer crush you in the head, it's gonna crush your head. You know, if somebody gets decapitated with a sword, the sword is going to do what it's due. You know, it's going to make your head pop off and blood spew all over the place, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of that in this show. But there's some really good storytelling here. In midst of all of the battles and the action that takes place, there's a really good story, a nice through line with our lead character, Sigrid, who is a half human, half giant warrior that wants revenge on Thor for killing everyone at her wedding. You know, that it was a real red wedding, and he murders everybody at her wedding with to her husband or would be husband, Leaf, who is a king. And before they can finish their vows, they were interrupted by Thor. And you have Loki, who is typical Loki. You know, you can't trust him. And Loki is the best part of this series, I believe. At least the most complex character in this show, because he's Loki. You know, you don't know where he's coming from. Is he being sympathetic? Is he being real? Is he lying? Is he being deceptive? Is he you know what I'm saying? You are constantly questioning Loki throughout the show. And when something doesn't go the way Loki tells you, he always has a way to justify it. You know, is a way that, oh well, I said that such and such and such. You know, I never said that this, and this. And it's a way you like, well, he did say it that way. And you still question him all the way up to the last episode. I really enjoyed his character throughout, and I enjoyed the voice actors here. There are a lot of voice actors that I never heard of. Sylvia Hooks, Stuart Martin. There are a few people in here that I don't know. There are a few that I do know as smaller roles. You know, the well-known actors that you may know of, they have smaller parts, and that was cool. That was, you know, that was an interesting approach. You know, because this show isn't about who's in it. You know, it is about the story, and I enjoyed it for you know. I didn't have to sit there and listen to the voice and like, I wonder who that is and all this. It didn't matter. You really was entrenched in the story. I mean, overall, you know, this was a really good show. It's nothing that will set the world on fire. That'll probably make you want to look up Norse mythology and do more research on. Because quite honestly, they told it all. I mean, it was a really cool way, an inventive way to teach you Norse mythology. And it was so interesting. Even stuff that I didn't know. And I don't walk around proclaiming to be a scholar in Norse mythology. I know enough to engage in a conversation with somebody, but not enough to hold a lecture at Harvard about it. So I am dead in the middle, but I learned a lot of good stuff here, and it was told in a very fun and entertaining way. Now, was it a perfect show? No, it wasn't a perfect show. It's 8 episodes. They probably could have cut it down to 6. You know, it felt a little stretchy in those, I don't know, episode 4 through 6. It felt kind of stretchy, you know, and it drug. I was trying to find a nice way to say it, but there is no nice way to say it. It drug in the middle. But I know what they were doing. You know, they were just trying to tell the story. And it wasn't like it was useless information that was being told to us in those episodes or throughout the episodes. It was just draggy, you know. It was an episode in here, I want to say about 5, I think it was episode 5. And it was just an episode of telling stories. And uh, they just told stories that were stories from this mythology. But who cares? It had nothing to do with the it had nothing to do with the plot per se. It was just fun stories to tell, but uh, I'm ready for the story to start, ramping up, and it actually made us hit the pause button, or actually dead stop. So, it was. It, I don't know. That was just a bad move. That was a bad move. If it wasn't for that, this probably would have been one of the top shows of this year. But it drugged. Now I love the animation style here. I thought this was a cool animation style that they used throughout. The direction was pretty good. The episodes that Zack Snyder directed were pretty good. And honestly, the first episode is the one that hooked you, and he directed that one, and that was a really, really good show, episode, I should say, that got me hooked, and I was on for the ride, and it was fun. It was a fun ride after that, but it just drug, and then he directed the last episode, and it was better than previous episodes, but at that point, it was basically all out war. So not much storytelling in that episode. But I gotta give Zack Snyder credit for this show, because Zack Snyder is, as I stated before, a visionary director, storyteller, not known for his storytelling. his storytelling needs a little help, and the style over substance. That's what I was looking. The phrase I was looking for. It's just no substance to his work, and that includes the DC comic movies. There was no substance. A lot of style, no substance. Here has some substance, and I appreciated it, because I like Zack Snyder. I really do. I know a lot of people poo-poo on his movies, like I have. But there's some good stuff in all of his movies. Even the movies that are bad, there's some good stuff in it. Sucker Punch is probably his worst film. But there's some good stuff in Sucker Punch. And I cheer for him. I really do. I wouldn't go as far to say I'm a huge Zack Snyder fan, but I cheer for him whenever his name is attached to something. I watched Rebel Moon Part 2, even though I did not like Part 1. But I jumped on board for Part 2 just to give him a chance. Maybe he could redeem it. Unfortunately, he made it worse, but it is what it is. But as far as Twilight of the Gods, I think this is some of his best work in a long, long time. And I know he's not the grand poobah of everything involving this show, but he did have his hands in it in some shape, form, or fashion. I give Twilight of the Gods, which is currently on Netflix, a letter grade of a B-. Yeah, it's decent. It's watchable. I burned through it in one sitting. 8 episodes. I think they're about 30 minutes each. It was a cool watch, and I didn't even realize that I finished watching it in one day. Sitting there watching it, and it was over. 8 episodes. I was like, oh man, kind of wanted more. So if a show leaves you, or a movie leaves you kind of wanting more, that means it's a success in my eyes, and I highly recommend it. Check out Twilight of the Gods. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. If you have checked it out, I would love to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. If you want to leave a comment there, just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Twilight of the Gods. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.